So what I have here is a game called Quartermaster General. This is kind of an older game from a company called Griggling Games. The game is attributed to the designer Ian Brody. I have a lot of thoughts on this game actually, so pardon me if I ramble, but this game intrigues the hell out of me because it is a fast-paced World War II area control game that's based solely on a hand of cards that you're given, or a deck of cards that you're given, for your specific faction. Now, this plays up to 6 players, with one of the factions being Italy, so you can play a 3v3 in a World War II game, which is kind of cool. It's something that you don't really see in a World War II game, with Italy being like a full-blown faction. Now, they are an Axis faction throughout the whole game, so there's no like actual change there. But the game itself is very weird. There's a few elements that are just super weird about it. For one, you have a deck of cards. So I understand how my opponent's going to play. I understand how Germany is going to do their best to take out maybe Moscow and attack the United Kingdom. They have a bunch of cards to do that, but I don't fully know what kind of cards they have available to them. Now, there's basic cards that everybody gets, like Build Navy, which is just allows you to put a boat in a place that, in a water location that you're adjacent to. There's Build, or let me see if I can find one, Build Army, which is the same thing. You just build an army in an adjacent location. That's how you're going to spread out. There's also Land Battle, which means you remove a land piece that you're adjacent to, an enemy that you're adjacent to. That was an ally, but you get the picture. And that's just real simple. Those simple things can happen. If I'm next to you, you're in danger of having a piece removed. Now, you can go through this war of attrition where I do a land battle, and then it's your turn, and you just place a dude back where I removed a dude. So, like, you can kind of go through your hands and be like, okay, who's gonna run out of builds first? Because there's a finite number of cards in here, and you never get those cards back. Once your deck has extinguished, it's gone. You don't get to pull your discard back into a deck, and you have to watch out for that sort of thing. So this is very chess-like in the way that you're moving. It's very, very tactical. You have to manage your hand, which is more so for Italy since they have a smaller hand, or a smaller deck, and it's less of a problem for the United States. They have the biggest deck, but all of this sort of just kind of works together to be very tactical. The other element of the decks is that you have things like event cards or status cards. The status card stays out and just does something different. So it says, like, during the victory step of your turn, you get an extra victory point if you have an army in the Ukraine. With those statuses and events being in everybody's deck and being something different in everybody's deck, your first-time players are going to have a real hard problem playing against second or even third-time players because they know more about the opponent's decks. They know that they shouldn't take over Moscow really early in the game because the Soviet Union has a card called Russian Winter that just annihilates half the board if they're taken over by someone else. So you have to know these things going into it before you can accurately play it. The other element of this game that I found is, well, first of all, I played it and I found it to be horribly unbalanced. Like, crazy unbalanced. Now, that was my first play, and it had a whole bunch of just weighted stuff towards the United States and the Allies winning the war, just crazy easy. And when I went online to just kind of see what I did wrong, because I assumed I did something wrong, everyone was talking about how good the game was. And there's still a vibrant community working around this game and working with this game. There's a handful of expansions that make the game a little bit more in-depth, but overall, there is just a good community. And that made me go, okay, well, I have to come back and play this again because everybody seems to like it. So I played it again. And I still found it to be unbalanced. And I went back to the community and I'm like, hey guys, how is everyone okay with this unbalanced? And everybody's like, well, that's how the war goes. And that was weird to me. I'm like, okay, but we have a game here. Why are you okay with the unbalanced? And a bunch of people, they really came to me and said, look, this is a history game. So in some ways, you need balance, but you also need a bit of recreation. So where do you ride that line? Do you ride that line right on top of it and allow it to be super balanced? So that either the Axis or the Allies could win, no matter what the odds are, or do you weight it towards the Allies so the Allies win 75% of the time, and that one Axis win is just that much sweeter because you want to enjoy the reenactment. And I found that to be a really interesting concept that this game nails. And so for some people who want that element of history reenactment, this is your game. And it's a fun game, and it plays really quickly. It's way faster than any World War II simulation area control game I've ever played. And there are elements of the game where you can like discard 4 cards to search your deck for a land battle, build army, or build navy, or sea battle card. But that's a total of 5 cards you have to play to do the thing you need to do. Now, that's great early on, or it feels okay early on, but remember, your deck is your health, kinda. At the end of the rounds, if you don't have any cards, you actually start hemorrhaging victory points. You start losing victory points. There are other cards, especially in the United States deck, that will allow you to just deck people's cards out of their hands. They're called economic warfare. There we go, right there. This is to use, you must have an army within 2 spaces of an Axis home space, so you have to be close. That country must discard the top 5 cards of its draw deck, and if you don't have any, you lose 5 victory points instead. So you do have to manage these things, and getting to play this game more than 5 or 6 times is really where the game can start to shine for some people, but I just found it so compelling that there's just this huge community that loves this really unbalanced game that is, for me and my friends, kind of unplayable. I still like it. I still want to get it to the table once or twice and try it and continue to play. I want to keep playing as the Axis because I don't mind losing if the game is still interesting and hard, and if I get that win at one point, or if I'm able to make that happen, that'd be so cool. It would make the win even sweeter, and that's what some people also say in the community. But this is Quartermaster General. I recommend that if you see it, if somebody else has it, wants to play it, sit down and experience it, because it's a weird experience, and it's worth checking out because there's some rules in here that have you starting with cards in your discard. There's some other ways that people have sought to balance it by like saying maybe the Axis start with 6 victory points or 7 victory points, or maybe you bid to see who has to play the Axis by giving them extra victory points. The other kind of caveat at the very end is at the very end of this video, when you do get that 30 victory point lead, it has to be true at the end of the round, and the Americans end the round every time. So it actually is kind of easier, in my book, for the Allies to hit that 30 victory point mark way easier than the Axis, because they just don't have the final turn. And so the Allies can look and count out their victory points, and if they're going to lose, then they might play slightly differently so that they can get an extra victory point this round so they don't lose. Whereas everyone else has to be proactive, and it's just a little harder. But that actual rule is there so that the early game for the Axis is way stronger and better. Because the early game is really where the Axis shines, the late game is where the Allies shine, especially the United States. So that's Quartermaster General. I recommend you give it a try and just experience it the way I did, because I found it super fascinating. And thanks for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, like, share, subscribe. Subscribe's down there if you're on YouTube. Tap your screen and then tap the little plus dude to follow us on Instagram, on IGTV. You'll follow us on all the Instagram stuff if you do that. And hopefully we'll see you in the next videos.